Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Grandville City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask Marcy to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Grandville.
Here.
Marina.
Here.
Norcott.
Here.
Steenstra.
Here.
Truce.
Here.
Vanderwall.
Here.
And Mayor Mas.
Here. Well, I see that the pastor who was scheduled to give the invocation is not here tonight, so I have asked Pastor Dave Christian, who is actually a relative of mine as well, who is lives in Grandville, to give the invocation. So he had 10 seconds of notice. So for those of you who wish, I'd invite you to stand for the invocation, and we're going to follow that by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks.
Dear God, we come to you in the name that's above every name, the name of Jesus. And we ask you, Lord, to help us conduct the King's business tonight in a way that is pleasing to you, so that we may be governed properly according to your word, according to the declaration, according to the Constitution, according to our local bylaws and ordinances. Help each and every one of us, Lord, to know our part and fulfill that. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Pastor. Appreciate that. Now, let's see. You have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support. Motion support. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposition, please say no. We have the minutes from last meeting, November 27. You've had a chance to take a look at those. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Support.
Motion support. Anything anybody wants to point out, additions, corrections, anything like that? If not, all those in favor of approving those minutes, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposition, please say no. Okay. Next, presentation of bills. Again, kind of a substantial amount tonight. Lots going on in the city. About $885,000. Ken, anything you'd like to point out before we open it up for questions?
Yeah, about 75% of those, Mr. Mayor, are just 3 bills. So at the end of the construction season, we're seeing a lot of that work be invoiced that has been completed already in the city, or advancing the progress of those various projects. But 2 of them were on the pre-written checks. They related to 2 projects at the clean water plant. The invoice for Franklin Holwerda is a progress billing related to the aeration project. That was $245,000. And the invoice for Davis Construction is $178,000 toward the biosolids project. And that one is down to about 10% left to be billed. So you're seeing the tail end of that. Also flagged on page 4 a couple of major streets bills. Kent County Road Commission, a smaller bill, $16,500, and that was related to work the county did for the city on the 44th Street overpass over 196 recently. And then large bill, $152,000, is the billing related to Chicago Drive repaving by Reith Riley. And there's about a 5% holdover for some striping for next year. But those right there probably take a good chunk of the bills tonight. The rest I didn't notice anything very unusual, so I'll just try to answer any questions council might have.
Okay. Questions for Ken or Jane about the bills? If not, is there a motion to approve the bills tonight in the amount of $885,268.34?
So moved. Support.
And support. Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Marina.
Yes.
Norcott.
Yes.
Steenstra.
Yes.
Truce.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Gelderlos.
Yes.
And Mayor Mas.
Yes. Next item is a public hearing, but it's not 7:15 yet, so with your permission, let's drop down to, let's do some public comment. Yeah. Actually, that does come before the public hearing. So anybody here tonight like to address the council? Just come on up to the podium, give us your name, address, and tell us what you're thinking about tonight. Martha. Eric is pointing at you, so.
Good evening. Martha from Muland, 4263 Indian Springs, Southwest, next to lovely Buck Creek. My husband and Eric, and I would like to share our appreciation for all of you who serve our community, those of you who are here, those of you who serve every day and we don't even know their names. We appreciate you so much. If we have time, I'd be remiss if I didn't say a few things about Buck Creek. May I?
Absolutely.
Thank you. The beautiful creek that's full of life, and I did write this down because I don't want to miss anything, is the reason why we moved here, and probably the wonderful festivals that you know who plans for us as well. Although her waters still shimmer, our creek is struggling like many other bodies of water in a modern world. According to several current research studies, I can sum up the creek's main problems in 4 areas. The first one's warmer temperatures. The second one's erosion. The third one's elevated salt levels. And the fourth one is pollution from fertilizers, trash, and feces. Again, warmer temperatures, erosion, elevated salt levels, and pollution from many sources. The 2022 Buck Creek Watershed Management Plan's #1 recommendation is that we must restore and create wetlands. It adds that interest and authorization from property owners is key. Ken, do you have that watershed management plan? I know you did, and it's so good to see you.
If I have the most recent one, if nothing has changed in the last year.
That was the latest one. That's good to know you have that. The report highlights that many areas of the creek suffer from removal of trees. Thanks to Kyla and the Tree Council, we're remedying that. And mowing or farming to the water's edge. Simply planting primarily native plants and trees in strategic locations would address all 4 problems. Won't solve them, but it will help. I walk along Buck Creek a lot. I know a lot of you do too. And there are still areas that could easily have a border that still allows a view of the creek, but yet feeds pollinators, our birds, and protects the water. UOY City Council members have already taken a big step. You approved the Grandville Environmental Sustainability Subcommittee's plan to certify our city as a National Wildlife Federation wildlife habitat community. Your support, your continuing support is greatly appreciated on this exciting project. Kudos. Another step involves our city parks and neighborhood planning. A focus on a diversity of native trees and plants has been proven to reduce maintenance costs, eliminate a need for chemical and fertilizer applications, while it still creates colorful spaces for residents, birds, and pollinators. Community lawns could be reconfigured to reduce turf grass, which has no positive impact on water quality. To address the issue of salinity levels, which was just shocking to me when I first saw our monitor showing spikes in salt in our creek, possibly informing residents and businesses about this issue and encouraging them to use less salt around their property might be encouraged. A little does go a lot, and I've seen some of our neighbors pile it on, and it's not necessary. And I was shocked to find out that even Lake Michigan, salinity levels is increasing. Of course, all these streams and rivers are flowing into it, so when you think about it, it makes sense. After one of our creek cleanup events, I had a volunteer share with me that after observing the trash on the creek, it helped her realize that she and her family were what she described as living in a bubble. And she was ready to make positive changes. And I know there are times where we've always done things the same way, but sometimes when we remove ourselves from that bubble and look around us, we see a lot of opportunities. I've often said that one family's change is a trickle, and a community's changes are a tsunami. It does take a community. A more comprehensive report, probably with the slideshow, will be forthcoming. Friends of Buck Creek's new president, Becky Dykes, and I will be planning with our board to create a long-range strategic plan to work with city government and other local environmental organizations. By the way, I want to thank you very much for approving my appointment to the Grandville ESC. I presented my fellow members with a holiday gift last week, and in the spirit of sustainability, it contains my new environmental hero, a grass called, you've probably heard of it before, bamboo. Yes, I presented them with teepee made totally of bamboo, no chemicals, no chlorine bleach, and I'm happy to say that it's been tested in the Vermeulen family, and much to Eric's chagrin, it has passed. I've also presented City Council. I hope I got everybody tonight. Marcy, let me know if I didn't get you. Did you eat a little something?
I did.
Something else of bamboo, and Eric and I use these regularly, and he doesn't grumble about them at all anymore. They are bamboo toothbrushes, which are totally not combustible. Actually, they could be combustible. We have thrown a couple in our fireplace. Compostable, the box too. And I'm not sure about the bristles. I have to be honest with you. I know that some companies actually use a special kind of oil that creates the bristles. Castor bean oil, it's called. So anyway, I hope you enjoy them. And by the way, if you're interested in the toilet paper, it's made by a company called Who Gives a Crap. Thank you so much for all you do and for giving me a moment to talk.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the gift, too. I've got a couple quick questions, if you don't mind.
Yes, of course. I'll try to answer them.
Well, number one, it's not a question, just a comment. I'm so glad that you were here to speak tonight, because with us we have our landscape architects, and we're going to be talking about Millrace Park in particular. So I'm sure
saw
they've
that.
listened to what you've said, and so it's good timing for that. Also, does Friends of Buck Creek have any plans to do community outreach? And I should know the answer to this, but community outreach as far as like, what is a rain garden? How could I have one in my yard? Because now we've got some great space over at the library to
Yes.
have meetings like that. So you've
Yes.
got some stuff in the works.
We did do a native plant seminar in the fall. We held that at the library, and it was sparsely attended, but the people who were there were really excited, and we had native plant vendors there, and I can see us, people are saying, well, I couldn't make that one. Can we do another one in the spring? And yes, at the dedication for the Rain Garden Arbor Day, which hopefully it all falls into place, we could do lots of educational things at that time, but yes, you're right, Steve. We do plan. Education's always been a key part of Friends of Buck Creek because, like I said, it takes a community. Thanks for those questions.
Yeah, thanks for
Anybody
your
else?
work.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the council? Just come on up to the podium, give us your name, address, tell us what you're thinking about. Chris, welcome.
My name is Chris Start. I live at 3165 Franklin, right behind us. My concern is parking. Every time you have festivals, you have events down in Grandville. Recently, on that Saturday, someone was parked slightly over my driveway, about so much into it, blocking it. So I had a very difficult time trying to pull into my driveway without driving on the grass. Once I got in, I couldn't back out because otherwise I'd hit his bumper, his car, and it sat there for hours. I went across the street, talked to one of the police officers, and I asked her if she could come over and put a ticket on it or have it towed, one of the two. Well, we're in the middle of shift change right now, so I can't do it right now. She's like, do it later. And I says, I'm not looking at doing it later. I'm looking at doing it now. So please do it now rather than later. I appreciate it. Put a ticket on it, whatever. But he's blocking my driveway, and I can't get back out. So if we can do something about parking during these festivals and stuff. I don't know what you can do, but, it's getting to be an annoyance for me. So.
Good. Thanks for the comment. I got your text the other night, and I did take a look, and I know exactly what you're talking about. It was a problem for you.
Yep.
I might have been able to pull in, but I'm not sure I could have pulled out again. So
I just barely pulled out.
yeah. Anyway, thanks for the comment. Appreciate it. Anybody else like to address the council? Last call? Anybody? Okay. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, and that's about renaming a portion of Division Avenue. Ken, you want to kind of give the introduction? I know there's materials in our packet as well. So.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit at the last council meeting when we established the hearing that, not in this packet, but in that packet, you had the benefit of the minutes from the DDA meeting that was held in November, at which the DDA board discussed it at length and decided ultimately to make a formal recommendation to council to rename a portion of Division Avenue. And the portion that's in question is the portion of Division that is north of Prairie Street. The south portion is all residential, the north partial portion is commercial and industrial. And so I think we went over some of the reasons, but confusion with other streets named Division in several West Michigan communities is one of the primary issues there. And as part of the conversation, a couple of names were suggested by the DDA board. Gates Way was one of them, was mentioned in your packet, and I think we discussed it last time as well. And the other one is Red Mill, which is a reference to the historical use of that area to reach the old Red Mill that was farther south, closer to the Buck Creek area. So council decided at that point to take some public comment on this and see if folks are in favor of it or if there's any concern about it. As I mentioned, naming the street is actually a city council function, and so if you do determine that you'd like to proceed with the name change, you can go to the names, one of the names that's been suggested, because they've been vetted against the Kent County list of approved street names. And or if you choose to, you can go a completely different direction and put a different name in there for whatever reasons you might decide as a group are logical to you. So tonight's function is the first portion, which is just taking public comment, and then should there be a desire to move forward, we'd handle that by resolution at a future council meeting.
Okay, great. Let's open up the public hearing. Anybody here tonight would like to address the council or, on the matter of renaming portion of Division in Grandville? Welcome.
Good evening, Joel Barr. Pleasure to serve as your DDA chair for the last little bit, and the DDA is bringing this recommendation to the board. I'm also going to speak not on behalf of the DDA, but as myself as a property owner on Division. I am the owner of 3140 Division. That is owned by an LLC of which I am the owner. It's called Red Mill Properties. So you probably know which way I'm leaning. But I named that because I love history. Being partners with Rick Bullhouse for so long, you're going to love history. And if you go into the Bend in the River book, on page 67 is a picture of the old Red Mill that sat at the south end of what is now Division Avenue. My business has been affected by the name. We have clients that ask where we're located, and if we say Division, sometimes they'll call and say, we're just south of 28th Street in Wyoming or Grand Rapids, and it's happened a lot. I also don't like the name Division because it is, by its nature, very divisive. So when we tell people we're right behind the Rainbow Grill, then they know where we are. But for us, I think Red Mill would be an homage to the history of this road that was used to take the plaster from the Red Mill north to the Grand River and then down the Grand River all the way to Grand Haven and beyond. It's a neat piece of our history. Obviously, 100 plus years ago, the Red Mill was probably an occupational and safety hazard and one of the reasons why we have workers' compensation laws. But the Red Mill itself was a pretty neat building that is now, what's located there is now part of the park at the end of Division there. So our office would be appreciative of renaming it. It's up to you, and we defer to your wisdom and judgment. Thank you.
Thanks for the comment. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Carolyn, welcome.
Hi. Carolyn Frederick, 3848 Crowfoot. I have no objection to renaming the street other than please don't name it after anybody specific. because I think that sets a bad pattern. No offense, but maybe this person that you want to name it after isn't loved by everybody in the community, so you divisive right there. I personally like Red Mill myself, but I'd be open to anything other than naming it after a particular individual. I just don't think it does the city good.
Thanks. Appreciate the comment. Anybody else? Final call? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Council, what do you think? You wanting to change the name, and if so, what would that name be? And that would be done future resolution,
Yes.
right? Yeah, Chair.
I'll go. Yeah, I know the DDA board had spent some time on this and vetted some names against the county and everything else. I think they started with maybe a dozen names total. That's where they started to. And I know I said this last time, and I'm going to say it again. I know they alluded to a Crombine way, and I know that they're not going that direction. That's fine. I like Red Mill, and I think it's in need of a change. I don't like division, whether it's in Grand Rapids or whether it's in Grandville. So I'd support Red Mill.
I see some nodding, myself
Yeah, I would definitely
included.
support that too. You all heard my comments last time. I certainly agree with Carolyn. Wouldn't ever support naming it after anybody. And we don't really have much of a history of that in Grandville, naming streets after
Right.
people around here, or any history that I'm really aware of. And Red Mill is a great nod to our history. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a win.
Thoughts? Josh?
I like Red Mill too, and I like Joel's sentiment about, renaming it in something historical that's got some significance. But isn't there also a Mill Street on the north side of Chicago Drive, not too far from there too?
We do have a Mill Street.
So
yes.
it's kind of in that immediate neighborhood, isn't it?
It intersects Canal between,
Prairie, yeah, just
Yeah.
south of Prairie.
So I guess that would be the only
Yeah.
thing is it too similar to Mill Street that's already there? But I do like Red Mill, and I agree with the comments that were made about not naming it after a person, especially a living person, like Paul had mentioned, a meeting or two ago. But I'm fine with division too, but if the businesses, if it's helpful to them there, that makes it easier for people to find where they're located. I grew up on a division street in Comstock Park, and those division streets in about every community around here, so something unique would be helpful.
Any other thoughts? Okay, and it sounds like we'll go ahead and prepare a resolution to that effect. Okay, good. Next item is the consent agenda, and approval of this would be in the best interest of the city because there are a couple purchases on there. Driveway lighting at the clean water plant, as well as some money for residential trees. Kind of a tree sale like we had last year that was very successful. How many trees did we sell, Kyla? 62, yeah. So tonight on the consent agenda, we have some reports. Clean water plant, October report, fire, EMS, police, and treasurer's November reports. Park and Rec minutes from October. The Environmental Sustainability Committee from November 7, and the Library Board and Historical also from November. And then we have the two purchase orders that we talked about. The clean water plant, driveway lighting, and there's a memo on that, as well as the tree board for $3,000 for residential tree sale. Purchase subsidy, whatever you want to call it. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda in the best interest of the city?
So move.
Motion
Support.
and support. Any comments, questions, anything anybody wants to talk about in particular on there? Tim?
Just a question for Chief Anglem. With the personnel, the way I read it, we're keeping one and we're losing one?
We lost one of our recruits the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We were released from the academy.
Okay, so we'll be posting the position in January, and then once we get somebody appointed, then we'll be back to full strength?
I'm not sure we'll ever get to full strength, sir, but we should have had two come out of the academy to get sworn in today. We only had one. We do have a recruit starting our employment on January 8th. And that'll, once that person becomes a sworn officer, we'll be at 27. We're authorized at 28, and that'll be the position that we're posting for in January.
Okay.
We'll be looking both for a licensed individual, or if we can't find a suitable licensed individual, we'll go to recruit route again, as the state grant is still available for that. However, that $30 million is going fast, and they now anticipate it being completely expended by spring of '25.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments about anything on the consent agenda? If not, Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Nordhook.
Yes.
Steenstra.
Yes.
Truce.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Gelderlo.
Yes.
Meringa.
Yes.
And Mayor Mas.
Yes. Ken, City Managers Report. Mill Race Park Additional Professional Services.
Yeah, we've got Rachel and Katie with us today from OCBA, and they were kind enough to kind of catch me up a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago, I forget when it was now, on this project for Mill Race, and some of this may already be known to council, but in general, because of some changes to the delineation that, to the FEMA maps, the the floodway and floodplain boundaries changed, and that had dramatic effects on the plan that had already been in process and in fact already partially funded by grants from the state. And it requires significant changes to the plan from the version that you would have seen at the time the grant was submitted. And so you've got tonight some information that they'll walk you through that shows where we are and where we've been and where we hope to go. And then the primary request tonight is to greenlight OCBA and their various subcontractors that work on different elements of planning park projects with them to continue the process to expend some additional funds to adjust to the new reality of the floodplain out there and still be able to take advantage of the grant funds that we've been awarded. And on that score, we have been granted some extension by the state to allow us to continue to do that. This is something that was in process when I came in, so there may be some things that you're already aware of here, and maybe there's some that's new. But I think the place to start is just to ask Rachel and Katie to just bring us up to speed as a group here.
Welcome.
If it's okay, we can put some of the visuals up on the screen. Okay. I'm Katie Chase with OCBA Landscape Architects.
Rachel Hughes Nelson with OCBA Landscape Architects. So as Ken stated, we came on board at the end of 2022 to do the design work for this project for Mill Race Park. And we met with Eagle at the end of January, beginning of February, to kind of look at Buck Creek and to see what concerns they would have with the proposed work, if they had any concerns with the pedestrian bridge or the trail or anything like that. And that was where they raised the issue that the FEMA maps had changed, and they changed rather drastically. Previous FEMA map just had a floodplain through the area, and it kind of went about halfway through the park, so the northern half of the park was outside of the floodplain. So that's where any of the spoils that we'd be excavating for the trail work or for the pedestrian bridge would be spoiled there, so we weren't having to pay to take that off site. Now the new floodway that is there takes up a good portion of the park, and a floodway is much more constricting in terms of what is allowed and what isn't allowed, because you're now dealing with movement of water. And then the floodplain itself is now well up into the neighborhood, unfortunately, for several of the homeowners in that neighborhood. So we no longer have a place to put spoils from any of the work on the site. So that means anything has to be trucked off site to a place outside of the floodplain. And you're going to get a lot of cut and fill with the pedestrian bridge, with the trail, with the new shelter, with all of that work now proposed in there. So that was adding significant costs to the project. In addition, in the wetland delineation that we had for the south side of Buck Creek for the proposed trail over there, that entire area is forested wetland now. So Eagle says you can affect up to 1/3 of an acre, and we were well over that. I think we're at 1.5 acres with the trail. So we would have had to do mitigation, which is very costly in order to put the trail in there. So with all of those issues, we, as a group, sat down with the folks at the DNR to talk about the trust fund grant. So a trust fund grant has specific items, scope items they call them, that you say you're going to do, and that's part of what gives you the points to be awarded the grant. Can't really affect those items. So we sat down with them and explained the situation. They have been running into the issue of the FEMA map with other areas, so we're not the first to have to deal with this change. They were great. They understood that the FEMA map wasn't of anybody's doing here, and that we needed to make some changes in order to do the majority of that project, but still, be able to afford it, just because that added so much cost. So in doing so, part of the discussion is we tried to keep the scope items as best we could. The trail has been relocated from the south side of Buck Creek to the north side of Buck Creek. It's shorter. So it's still connecting 2 points in the existing trail system, but it's on the north side and hopefully a little bit less or more out of the wetland area. And then instead of having a pedestrian bridge, we have an overlook deck. This will still allow people to have access to the water, to see it, to enjoy the water, enjoy the views and all of that. It just won't give them the cross from north to south. What we've said is, kind of internally talked about, is that southern trail and that pedestrian bridge is now kind of a future phase 2. To give more chance to kind of work out the details, and then dealing with FEMA and the maps and the wetlands and all of that. These changes would still allow the project to move forward. DNR was in complete support of those changes. They said it still met the goals of what the project was looking for, and would help reduce costs, and so they were okay with that. We still have to do, so one of the requirements of FEMA when we have a floodway is we have to have some modeling done by an engineering firm. And even with an overlook deck, because we're still doing that work within the floodway, we have to bring on this engineering firm that can do that modeling. We were able to find an engineering firm here in local to Grand Rapids that actually has done some modeling in a very close proximity, and they already have that data. We don't need to do additional topographic survey work or any of that. They already have the modeling data, so they are ready to go to do that for the permit. So that was a boon that we were able to find somebody with that data already in hand. So now we are looking forward to moving ahead with the project, getting that engineering work done, working through Eagle to get the permitting done, and making sure that we meet all of those scope items.
I think that sounds good.
Questions from council? So the authorization sought tonight is the $76,000 for additional services.
In the OCBA letter dated 13 September, and it's itemized, broken down by the OCBA design fees for the landscape architecture, plus the engineering that Rachel was just talking about, some additional soil borings, and then wetland delineation, which I think needs to happen. That has to extend into the spring, right?
Right, yeah, so they can go out and kind of look at it right now and kind of give us a best guess as to where they think that wetland delineation is, but really until April hits and we start getting some warmer weather and some thaw and some sprouting of plants, we're not going to have that data until then. And Eagle really, and nobody really accepts that data from the wintertime anyway, so we're kind of waiting for that April work to happen, and that will give us the final kind of piece we need to do all the permitting.
Well, it sounds like the state has been working, is very understanding because of the change. So.
Right.
And I would think, too, the neighbors to the south are probably happy with this development.
I would assume so, yes.
Or lack of development.
I would assume so.
Council, anybody have questions? Randy?
Yeah, I have a question. This is more for my own personal knowledge or information, but I'm just looking at your map, and I see F, the proposed new gravel, or it's called stone dust path. Does that help us in regards that there's less spoils that we have to get rid of, or do the same requirements?
It helps in terms,
Apply.
it doesn't help in terms of spoils. You still have a section that you're going to excavate out and put new material in. Where it helps us more is it is not a impervious surface. So you're not putting a solid surface that's not going to have any, take any storm water into it. Because it's a semi-pervious surface, it will take storm water. And so that helps with those kind of calculations, but it won't help us with the spoils.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, Josh?
I guess a couple questions. So I've seen this a couple times now because we looked at this at the Park and Rec Board initially, and then it came back here for approval to go back to the DNR to work, as you described,
Yep.
you know, to get that revised plan approved.
Yep.
That also helps us take the cost that's projected down from over $1 million to about $800,000, it looks like, which obviously we need to reduce some of the costs because the grant is only for a couple $100,000 and we only had a couple $100,000
Right.
budgeted to match.
Right.
At the time we talked about this last at the Park and Rec Board, it was approved to move forward as this proposal, but I think we were still waiting to hear about kind of how are we going to pay for the additional cost, because the state's not giving us any more money from the
Right.
grant,
Right.
even though they were amenable to the changes and so forth. I'm just curious, I don't know if it's a question for Jane or for Ken, you know, where are we finding the additional funds? I think there was some ideas that were kind of being floated around to pay for this. Obviously, I'm supportive of the project. We need to get it done. It's not going to get any cheaper. Personally, I think it's outrageous, the increasing costs that we've realized with this over the last couple of years. But it's important that we get it done. I'm just curious if there's an idea where the additional funding comes from. I mean, part of that maybe is selling the house and putting that back into some park projects like we had talked about, but
I'll start.
Give any
and then
additional information
Jane and
about
Charlie
that?
can chime in. Obviously, it isn't what we budgeted, and we're seeing that in a lot of things post-COVID as far as costs go. This one's even more significant because of the nature of the change, but I don't think there's a definitive answer, but there's some things that are being looked at. One is Charlie and Jane are going to meet with the folks from OCBA and take a little more fine-tooth look at what's proposed and try to do a little bit of value engineering and see if there's some opportunities for still bringing that cost down before it goes to bid. And in terms of what we have available, I'll defer to Jane as far as ARPA funding and those kinds of things. I'm not sure where the current expenditure levels are on some of those things, and maybe Jane's a little more up to date on that. I know she is.
okay. I was just curious if there was any update on where the money was coming from in the last few months. I know when we looked at these numbers before, we did think there was some opportunity to probably reduce some of this cost. It's kind of like the worst case scenario for,
It's worst case
for
scenario.
cost.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
that there was some ways to kind of tweak that. And I know Charlie talked a little bit about that too, that
Yep.
thought we could save some
Yeah.
cost on some of the materials and stuff. but-
That's next step, is to sit down with Jane and Charlie and kind of go over, you know, like I said, we have to keep those scope items, but sometimes there's some flexibility with those scope items. You know, there's not a, like say the trail, there's not a linear path of that trail that's in that scope item. It's the trail is in the scope item, so making it shorter helps. So are there other things like that maybe we can reduce the size, or, you know, maybe the shelter becomes a little bit smaller, or the playground, you know, there's things like that we're going to take a look at and see what we can do to bring those costs down.
Okay.
Charlie, on that score, I think you've already looked at a couple things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's going to be some ways to reduce some costs.
And Jane, as far as the ultimate source of additional funding, your thoughts on that?
There's a lot of current ARPA projects in play right now, and so until the projects that you earmark for ARPA funds to be used, until those projects are done or mostly done, we won't really know what kind of balance we have left with our ARPA funding. Again, as far as the project cost, I think we need to get a better handle on our have-tos. Try to mitigate the want-tos, so that we can at least get the project going and get a giant portion of it done. Before we do anything, I know this project will have to come back to council for approval. It's, you know, we've been batting back and forth the amount that the project is going to be for a number of months now, and until last week, I had no knowledge of anything. So I'm just getting up to speed on this. Charlie's a little bit more well-versed than I am, but we're definitely having some conversations, and after Wednesday, we'll have a much better idea of really what the project is going to cost additionally. I mean, we talked about having a phase 2 and things like that, possibly going back to the state to see if we could get for the grant money, but that all needs to be discussed and hammered out. We were at 50 cents on the dollar with the state. They agreed to pay half and we would pay half. And after the first round, the initial project cost, we were down to 17 cents on the dollar. And then with this new, the new revised plan, we're now at 25 cents on the dollar. I would feel more comfortable getting it back up into a 35 cents on the dollar range if possible. I mean, that seems more reasonable to me. The reason we decided to do this project is because of state funding. So I think from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, we need to really take a good hard look at our have-tos and see what those are gonna cost, and then come back to you and say, here's, if you're gonna move forward, here it is. So, I'll have a way better grasp on what's going on after we sit down with them on Wednesday.
Okay.
So, but as far as additional funding goes, I think the projects that were already earmarked as part of the ARPA funding, I think those need to be, completed, and we need to take a look at what we have left over in order to determine whether or not we even have any ARPA funds left, because, as they stated, costs just keep going up. So what we thought, might be $300,000 might now be, $400,000. So, and that's gonna be paid for with ARPA funds, so that's kind of how
Right. Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. I mean, we've taken on a lot of park projects the last couple of years, which is great. It's stuff that we've needed to do, but the costs also have been a lot higher than what we initially projected for some of them too, based on, inflation costs and everything. So I just want to make sure we're, being careful about making sure that we have the money available to do what we're looking to do.
Another thing that we talked about with Rachel and Katie was the timing. You've got a budget that runs through June 30, and it's not likely this project is going to get too far before that time. So we're already aware that we're going to need a budget expenditure for the 24-25 fiscal year, and that'll give you another opportunity to figure out how to fit some of this stuff in.
I do like what you're saying about going back to the state and seeing if we can get any additional funds to help address some of the cost discrepancies.
Like I said, we need to figure out what our have-tos are, because we've already agreed with the grant funds to do a laundry list of things. There are other things in that project plan that aren't part of our state have-tos, and so those are the things Charlie and I have kind of isolated and been talking about, so.
Okay. Keep us posted. Thank you.
I've got a question, Rachel. So if we authorize this for $76,000, are we going to get some information from that that's going to help us in our decision about how much the project is going to cost?
Yes, absolutely. That's the next step, is basically value engineering the project down, as Jane said, and figuring out how we still meet all the grant requirements, but it fits within the budget or close to the budget. Now, how do we get down to do it? And really, what are the, as she said elegantly, what are the haves to versus the want tos, and how do we make that decision? So that's part of what we do, is helping with that.
Any other questions, comments? So the request tonight is to enter into a contract with OCBA in the amount of $76,000 as per the letter from September. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion
Support.
and support. Any comments, questions? Okay, Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Steenstra?
Yes.
Truth?
Yes.
Vanderwall?
Yes.
Gelderlos?
Yes.
Merringa?
Yes.
Nordhook?
Yes.
And Mearmouth?
Yes. Thank you very much. Next item, bridge design services, cemetery bridge upgrades.
You've got a memo in your packet from Charlie Sunblad, our Public Works Director, on this topic. I think this is something you guys have talked about since the acquisition of the property on 34th Street, where we obtained acreage and a home, and also it's conveniently a bridge over Buck Creek. And it's something that the city has need for to access the south side of the creek, where we've got significant acreage now. In order to proceed, obviously when you're dealing with something as sensitive as the creek, and we want to recognize the same kind of concerns Martha's expressed. How do we do this right and not affect the stream negatively? We need to engage professional services to look at how that bridge is upgraded and how it now will have to be an inspection because it's a publicly owned bridge. And so for many years, Scott Engineering is a firm that we have used for our bridge inspections that are required on a regular interval for all of our street bridges over the various water courses in the city. And they have proposed to provide services to design and also to supervise any specific upgrade work that needs to be done once the design is done. And so the proposal tonight is to authorize Scott Engineering to perform the work at a cost of $20,230. That will then, once that's completed, they'll supervise the bid letting process, and we'll see what the cost is. There is an estimate there of $115,800. It's a little bit old. I don't think any of us think it's probably likely to hold up. We'll know more once the engineering work is done, but we envision this work going forward now to put us in a position to be able to do that work in 2024. Charlie, did I miss it? Okay.
Oh, I've got a question, just out of curiosity, because I understand your memo, and I think that's a great idea to hire them. But what's going to happen to that the old bridge?
The old bridge, the planking will be removed, and replaced with a concrete decking, so you can drive a dump truck over it, so it's big. The beams will be treated, the steel will be retreated, the new railing put on both sides of it, and both approaches will have a little bit of asphalt work done to it, too.
I didn't ask my question very good, sorry about that. What about the bridge that we've had for many, many years, the really old bridge?
Oh, the old one by the cemetery?
Yeah.
Hopefully take it out of there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's unsafe, but we use it, but.
So this will serve a couple purposes for the new 6 acres and maybe for the existing
Right.
12 or 14 or whatever was there. Okay, thanks. Questions for Ken or Charlie about the request to hire Scott Civil Engineering? Is there a motion to approve the hiring of Scott Civil Engineering in the amount of $20,230 to take a look at that bridge?
So moved. Support.
And support. Other comments, questions? Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Truce.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Gelderlos.
Yes.
Meringa.
Yes.
Nordhook.
Yes.
Steenstra.
Yes.
And Mayor Mas.
Yes. Ken, anything else?
I have nothing else tonight other than the request to enter into a closed session for the purposes of discussing pending litigation and collective bargaining. So you can go right to council
All
comments.
right, and we'll do that. We'll go to council comments, and Randy, we'll start with you tonight.
I don't think I have anything tonight, thank you.
Josh?
Just thanks to Teresa and the DDA and all the people that helped with the Christmas on the Commons event a week or so ago. I thought it went really well. There was lots of people down there. The weather was almost perfect. You know, it wasn't too cold, wasn't too warm, it was dry. Looked like everybody was having a good time, so well done. Thanks again. Nice event.
Absolutely, you're always allowed to speak.
I appreciate that always, and Scott and I do work really, really, really hard, but these events have gotten so big, and DPW and police and fire, like, you cannot do this without them. Especially DPW joining in this team, they come in with positive attitude and smiling, and they get the job done, and we're putting in 12-hour days, but they're there in the beginning, and they come back fresh at the end when we're exhausted, and so, I know I get a lot of credit for it, and I do a lot, but without all of these guys, and fire being there that night with the wicked cool truck, police presence there, and Steve with the tree lighting, and like, it is a group effort. Like, it's not 2 people running this event anymore, and I can't do it without all of them, and so I just hope that all of you realize, and Lottie, my assistant, all have come up on social
am very sorry about your driveway. And not that people read anything, but we will certainly try to put it out on social media and let people know, be respectful of the neighbors who live down here, and people of our community, because that's never our intent. So I apologize for that inconvenience. That's all.
Yeah, no, obviously, certainly, it's a group effort. Yeah, you're kind of the face of the event, but so many people working behind the scenes to pull it all off, and sponsors and city employees and volunteers, and yeah, just wonderful that we can do these events and that we can get people out and enjoying each other, having a good time, sharing memories with their families, and yeah, so thanks a lot. That's it.
Justin.
All right, well, I'll echo the thanks to everyone that Teresa just listed there for that. And I want to thank Martha for her wonderful advocacy for sustainability and your comments. Took some notes during that, and I think there's some good ideas there that we can build on. So thank you very much for sharing that. And as far as the parking issue, I did wonder if we couldn't, this is not the first complaint that I've heard about the events infringing on local homeowners down here during those events. So even if we could just put signs up that say, parking laws are enforced or something like that, just to give people that visual as they choose where to park their vehicle, it might be beneficial. And then I just wondered, next week we're going to appoint several people. We have 9 vacancies here for which we don't have necessarily recommendations. So I'm wondering what our plan of attack here, because I'll certainly go through all of the applicants, but it can sometimes be difficult in those meetings where we're just, okay, I have this resume and it looked pretty good to me. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to try and bolster that decision-making process to make sure we're getting the best applicant. Obviously, I'll read through everything that we have here and try to make the best decision I can, but at the end of the day, it's still a little difficult to do that just based on the paper in front of you. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Good comment, thanks. Tim?
I have nothing additional.
I have nothing to add, thanks.
Chair?
So the only thing I wanted to add was the project update sheet. It's one of my favorite things that I read in our council packets, just seeing what's happening around town. In the clean water plant, the memo gets smaller and smaller and smaller, which I think is good because the project is getting closer and closer and closer to completion. I would love an opportunity, probably in the spring, to go through and just have an abbreviated tour of what's new, what's fancy, what's shiny over there. I've been through there a handful of times, but I always love seeing what's new and what's happening, especially with all the investment we've put into the clean water plant. So I see Ken is making notes, which is always fantastic. I would just love to see that, Todd, when you guys are ready to show it off.
Yeah, maybe we can do that with our budget meetings. We usually have one over there, so.
Perfect time.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's it, thank you.
Okay. Just wanted to say how great I thought the event was. I told you, Teresa, the night of the event, that somebody who came and she said, I just cried tonight. And I'm like, why? She says, no, it was so beautiful. It was so good. It was like living in a Hallmark movie. And I thought, well, that's a great compliment. So that's because, we all cry during Hallmark movies, right? I mean, it's just like the quintessential small town, wonderful sense of community. So, you hit it out of the ballpark again. And I know it's just, I can't imagine how much work it is. I was there earlier in the week and saw your husband Scott out there working on Thursday night or Wednesday night, whenever it was. So wow. But it is appreciated. So thanks. That's all I've got. So as Ken mentioned, there's going to be a request tonight to adjourn to a closed session for 2 different purposes. One is to talk about pending litigation, commercial tax appeal for Grandville Inn and Suites. The other one is to talk about collective bargaining with the police department, rank and file. So is there a motion to adjourn to a closed session for that purpose? Those purposes?
So moved.
Support.
Motion support. Marcy, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Vanderwall.
Yes.
Gelderlos.
Yes.
Meringa.
Yes.
Nordhook.
Yes.
Steenstra.
Yes.
Truce.
Yes.
And Mayor Mas.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. We appreciate it.